Welcome to the Financial Coaches Podcast, where we talk about how to build your practice from startup to scale up while being the kind of coach your clients crave. Finally, a podcast for financial coaches. Here are your hosts, Maria Casillas and Cody Sizemore.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Financial Coaches Podcast. I am Maria Casillas and I'm joined here by my incredible co-host Cody Sizemore. We are here to talk to you about how to get some money in your pocket. We're actually going to talk to you about how to charge, and we were kind of thinking you don't charge enough. But before we do that, before we tell you all the things that are on our mind right now, I just want to take a moment to say thank you to each of one of you for tuning in today. If you're an every weeker, we appreciate you. We love that you're telling us where you are. I was in one of our meetups the other day, and one of the new people who were there who I had never met before said, "Oh my gosh, I listen to you all the time. I feel like you're a friend of mine." I'm like, "Oh, that is actually so sweet." So anyway, happy to be making friends all over the airwaves, and we appreciate each and every one of you. I also wanted to remind you that the way we find you and the way you can connect with us is through our Facebook group. It is the Financial Coaches Community by New Money Habits, and we encourage you to go there, answer a few very simple questions. We'll let you in, and we'll start to communicate right there. All right, Cody, it's time to make some money for people.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Doing okay today, by the way? I guess I didn't even ask you how you are. Are you good?
I'm good.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
So let's talk about this. This is something that I know you wanted to talk about. I don't think we necessarily saw it in our Facebook group. Like no one said, "Hey, could you please talk about this topic?" But we know from every person that we talk to that comes into our community, they're like charging way under what they should be doing. Mm-hmm. And I know you wanted to make this something that we addressed here on the show. So take it away.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about this because I have my own experiences with this. But I talk to a lot of coaches, people who listen to the show, like every now and then, I'll hop on the phone with them and just, talk with them and stuff like that. And I also know a lot of coaches too. And I've talked to them about this topic as well. And I just think that it's something that's important to talk about because I'm going to preface this entire conversation with just saying, if you're just now thinking about getting your business off the ground, or you've just started and you're working with, less than 5, clients, or you've had less than 5 clients, I just want to preface this with saying that it might make sense for you to, work yourself up to these different amounts that we're kind of talking about. But it also may not be a horrible idea to just give it a shot after you've had a little bit of experience. You don't need a ton, to really start asking for A, what you're worth, and also B, which I'm going to get into a little bit later, is what I think is actually going to serve the clients more as well. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, I talk to a lot of coaches, and a lot of the coaches that I talk to, I ask them, what are they charging? And the general consensus is that it's somewhere between the ranges of $75 a month to $300 a month, somewhere in there. And I think that that's a good starting place.
Can I tell you where I started?
Yeah, go for it.
It's a good thing that I did not know you back then, because you would have been like, "Huh?" I charged $100. It included a book. It included envelopes. And it included a full month and a half worth of training, worth of coaching.
Wow.
And some of it was in person.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you something, because I wanted to say this because of what you just said, that it's not serving the client. I 100% agree with that. Half of the people who came in, I almost had to beg to come in. Mm-hmm. And and there's a reason for that. And I know you're probably going to address that. And that's why I'm being very transparent with everyone right now about that. And I can also tell you that part of the reasoning it was all in my head, right? That this is all people would pay for, et cetera, et cetera. I know we go through like lots of hula hoops when we're trying to figure this out. But I had actually done the voluntary FPU before that, for like a few times before
Mm-hmm.
that. And I say voluntary so strongly because even though I was volunteering my time, I was also the one who had to go and collect the money and convince people to pay for that, which was about $100, right?
Yep.
And so I had already had the experience of trying to beg people to join something and then never actually saw a cent of that. So I just share all that because that was the foundation from which I sprung when it came to financial coaching. So if any of you out there is kind of in a similar situation, or you've gone down that path before, you know you're not alone. You know that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm going to pass it right back to Cody so he can tell you how to do it the right way.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you said that because I also have a similar experience. I did that as well. The voluntary FPU as well. And when I first started, I set my monthly rate at $150. And looking back at that, like if I was doing it all over again and I was getting started, I would do that again. I would, because that allowed people to come into my world. It allowed me to get some experience and get something out of it. But one thing I wouldn't do is I wouldn't have stayed there as long as I did. I stayed there for a while, like almost a year and a half, I'd say. I would have been like, looking back, if I would have done it differently, I would have only done that for like the first 5 clients kind of thing, just to get that experience under my belt.
Yeah. Wasn't it when we met that you started changing your pricing? Was it?
Yeah.
I thought so. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I remember that time.
Yeah. Yep. But, I just think that we get into that space, that range of 75 to 300 per month kind of thing, for a few reasons. Number one is we don't want to be a burden to our clients financially. And that is just a lie, first and foremost. When you have that kind of line of thinking, you are thinking in the same mindset that we want to help our clients break, which is that our services, they are 100% not an expense. They are not an expense. It is 100% an investment. This is, these teachings, these mindsets, these skills that they're going to be getting, it's not something they're going to do for 3 months, 6 months, whatever it might be. It's something that they're going to carry for the rest of their days, and it's going to affect the rest of their financial life. So it's not an expense, it's an investment, 100%. And if we're thinking that what we're asking is going to be causing these people a burden, then we are then looking at it as an expense to the client. And it's not an expense, it is an investment. So I need to get that out of the way first and foremost. Do not set your rate based off of what you think it's going to do to the client. Set your rate based off of what it's going to do for the client in the big picture. That's number one. Okay. But one thing that I have found with that range, that 75 to 300 range, is that generally speaking, the clientele at that level is not necessarily what I would deem to be ideal. Right?
Well, and oftentimes they're not ready, which is why I had to beg people to do $100 or convince. I didn't beg. I guess that's the wrong word, but I had to do some convincing.
Yeah. And, it's one of those things to where there's no shame in starting off that way, but, there are certain people who, will pay that amount and they'll step up. They'll be great clients. But I have just found that the majority of them, you do have to, like you said, beg them. And it's not even just begging to sign up, but it's also begging them to
show up,
be consistent, and to show up to the meetings and not reschedule all the time, and actually do the things that we're talking about, and actually, taking these lessons and applying them it's a struggle. It's like pulling teeth.
Yep.
And that creates a bad experience for them because they're not getting the results that maybe they could or should be getting. But it also creates a really bad experience for you as the coach. And it makes you feel drained. It makes you feel burnt out. And if you're feeling drained and burnt out and you're not getting joy from the service that you're actually like providing, then you're going to find yourself quitting.
Mm-hmm.
You just are, you know, and you don't need to do that. You know, you're underselling yourself for the sake of making the experience way more undesirable. And, you know, that's ultimately going to lead to you potentially walking away from what you're actually meant to do, which is helping people through financial coaching. So that's a really big reason as to why I wanted to bring this up, because I talk to so many people who charge that amount and they all feel the same exact way. Everything that you brought up and everything that I spoke through is how they're all feeling. And I'm like, it's not a coincidence. You know, it's just not. So, yeah. So with that being said, like when you do raise your investment, and I say investment, when you raise your investment to something that is painful enough to these clients to where they actually know, hey, if I'm going to do this, then I'm going to frickin' do it. That's when they start to take things seriously. That's when you start to see the transformation. That's when they actually get the value. That's when you see the value of it being returned to you, not just financially, but also mentally, emotionally, purposefully, all that kind of stuff, right? And, you know, I'm not saying, you know, to turn around and be like, yep, if you want to work with me, it's $20,000 for 6 months. You know, like there's levels here, you know? But just like total transparency, like my low end program, the low end one is $3,000. The high end one is $6,000. So that's just total transparency for you there. But that's just something that I found is like these people, generally speaking, now again, it depends on your clientele, but that kind of level is digestible for people. It is. They can accomplish it. And sometimes they can accomplish it and they can still make really good progress while they're like working with you and they're in the program, whether they do in full or they do a, you know, an installment plan, whatever. You know, they can still make progress. And then there's some people who it's almost like college to where like, you know, you have like this set amount of time that you're working together. And during that period, they understand like, hey, I'm not going to be making a ton of progress during this time. But once I complete and I get all these new tools and these new mindsets and these new, you know, ideas and structures and game plans, then I'll be able to take all of that and just explode to where I really want to be. That's cool too. You know, like we're not here to be like their saviors. We're here to equip them, you know? So that's kind of the long and short of it, to be honest with you. I could keep going, but I'm going to stop here. And I just want to like, you know, get some feedback from you, Maria. Like what's going through your head right now?
Well, first I want to say I really like the analogy of school. You said college. I'm going to go ahead and like say trade school or something.
Sure.
But that right now they might not be making that progress, but they're getting the foundation laid in order to have that rocket progress later on when they're done. So I really, really like that. I think one thing that you haven't really touched on, and this is all about mindset as well, is the idea of accepting that amount per hour. So a lot of times when people will, let's just say we use your low number of $3,000. I don't know what your program entirely looks like, but if you had to guess, I know you already know this. If you had to give us a number of how many sessions that would be, approximately how many hours sitting like knee to knee with somebody, how many hours would you say that is?
For the low end?
Yes.
8.
8 hours. Okay. I knew you would know the answer to that question. All right.
And before you ask the next question, I'm going to answer it for you.
Okay.
What is my hourly rate?
Well, that's not what I was going to ask, but
okay. Well, I'm sure you're doing the calculations.
Yeah. So I wanted to see what that comes to for them.
What my hourly rate is.
Okay, well, that's the whole point of this, because I'm doing the calculation on purpose, because ultimately that comes to $375 per face-to-face hour. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, before we hopped on here, I did look up what the average financial coach makes, and I think it said it was like $257 per hour. So way to go, 50% over the average. I'm super proud of you. But without that being said, there's a reason you don't know what your hourly rate is, because we are not charging per hour. We're charging per, whether it's like an actual package and that kind of thing. But we're not just giving them 8 hours. There's no way that you just are giving your clients 8 hours. You might be giving them 8 hours face-to-face time, but you not only put in all of the time to figure out the curriculum, like we talked about last week, you put in the time to go to your own trade school, if you will, to understand how this whole thing works. You probably went to the school of hard knocks as well, made a few of your own mistakes, had to figure out how to get out of it. You are also more than likely thinking about your clients, even when you're not talking to them. You're hearing something that was on the radio, or if anyone even listens to that anymore, you're hearing something on a podcast and you're like, oh, that reminds me of client XYZ. And now I can help them with that because this is something that's super useful for them. You are not just on for them during that 8 hours. Oftentimes, even when you have good boundaries, you are on for them a lot more often than that. And so I think a lot of people have a hard time knowing that, things are really tough right now and people are struggling to put food on the table, et cetera, et cetera. How can I possibly ask them to give me $375 per hour that I'm talking to them? And that's not what you're asking them to do. They're not paying you for the time that they're spending with you. They're paying you for that transformation that you're helping them to create later on. And you are not charging just for the transformation. You're charging for all of those other things that I just mentioned in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I've been rambling about this.
My pricing model is not based off of per hour. It's based off of value. That's what it is, because when you get into that mindset of like, oh, I'm going to charge per hour kind of thing. I think that it's damaging to both you and the client, because then you guys start thinking about it that way. And it's like, no, like you're not paying me for my time. You're paying me for the value that I'm bringing to you. That's what this is,
Right.
and I should be paid for that value kind of thing. I don't care if I give you like immense value and it only takes 2 hours. Cool. I don't need to spread it over the course of 10 hours. If I can deliver you that value in 2 hours, that's awesome. And that's a win-win for both of us, So when you start thinking about it as per hour, you are really, really not just boxing yourself in, but you're also what's the word I'm looking for? Devaluing yourself as well. And that's the other thing that I wanted to talk about with this topic too, is that when you charge, $300, $200, $100 per hour or per month, as compared, and you tell someone that, maybe on the front end, it might seem a little bit more digestible to them. But if you were to instead say like, hey, like, here's my program. This is what it entails. It's this long. There's this many meetings. This is what we're going to cover. Here's the investment, $4,000 kind of thing. The perceived value is really, really important. And that word is, that's like the theme of today, value, right? For some reason, when we hear a number and it's lower, humans think automatically it must not be that great, which is why we're begging people to sign on. It's why we're attracting the wrong people that we're looking for, kind of thing. But if it's at a higher investment and, it's got a couple zeros behind it, then all of a sudden it's like, wow, okay, so that is a decent chunk of money. But if it's set at that rate, then it must be good, right? So like, I have just found that people are more, they're more willing to actually invest more money if you price it at a higher rate than keeping it low. It's weird. I have more success with people investing more than less. And that's awesome. That's a win for them because they're actually hopping into the program, and because they invested that money, they're actually putting in the work and they're actually following through the things they need to do. And at the same time, it's also beneficial for us because we're getting a better return on our time as well. So it's a win-win for everyone, but it's that perceived value.
Yeah.
That's what's really, really important. Because what we do is high quality work. It is something that, isn't just for the amount of time that we're working on or working together. It's something that goes for your entire life. And it's also something that affects different areas of people's lives. It affects their marriage. I've had so many people tell me that they've also lost weight because they were doing better with their finances. It affects so many different areas, thus making it really valuable. And that's how you should price your services.
Yeah.
It's based off the value, not based off of, the amount of hours that you're putting in. And it shouldn't also be viewed as an expense. It's 100% an investment, 100%.
Yeah. Based on what you just said, the fact that you're wanting to base it on value, and going back to what you had said earlier about how it's okay to start at a much lower rate so that you can start to increase, your confidence around what it is that you're charging. This just kind of came to mind. I'm going to preface it with that and say I haven't necessarily tried this, but it came to mind and it might be a good idea. So encourage you to try it and get back to me. Let me know if it was a flop or not. But just how can we combine those two? And the idea that came to mind was that when you mentioned perceived value, people want to see that what you've done has been good for somebody else, right? So there is that whole notion of like every time you go to buy a new product, what do you first do? You go to the reviews and see what everyone says. And I always click on the number one star so I can see what the worst thing is, get that out of the way, see if it's something that people just don't know how they're rating correctly, or if there's something that's a common problem that I also have a problem with. So what if you did something like set your rate at, we're going to use the $3,000 number again, because that's what we're doing today. So what if you set your rate at $3,000, but then maybe for your first, 5-10 clients, you tell them that you will give them a $2,500 discount in exchange for a really good review. Now, you don't have to tell them a good review, but an honest review. And then so that way it sets the expectation that there is this higher dollar amount, and you don't have to give $2,500 discount, but you see where I'm going with this, Cody? Rather than just saying, I'm going to start at $500, actually set the amount higher and tell them that you're going to give it to them for less in exchange for an honest review at the end that they can then use later on, that you can use later on. And you have enough 5 of those under your belt. Not only are you going to have that to help get the social credibility, but you're also going to use those to help build your own confidence in that. And you have not lessened the perceived value of your program. So it's kind of like the trifecta. What do you think about that? Am I insane?
No, I think it's a good tactic for getting started.
Yeah, and I agree. I don't think this is something you should do if you're already charging and you got all that. I wouldn't suggest doing that. And we want to be very careful about doing discounted services. Having said that, I almost think it's better than starting at $100 a session or a month and telling people you're ultimately giving them the underlying perception that you don't really value this. Right. It's not that they think they're getting it for cheap. It's like you truly don't value it. But if you tell them, it's a higher number.
Yeah. Yeah. So for example, what you could do is you could say something along the lines of like, let's just say that this is a 3-month program, for an example. And you get to the investment portion. And this is for people who are just starting off, right? You could get to the investment portion and you could say, so for these 3 months, what it would look like to invest into this coaching program would be $3,000. Now, with that being said, I do have some incentives for you. And the incentives basically look like this. Like if you're ready to move forward with coaching today, what I would do, or if you're ready to move forward with coaching today, and also at the end of our coaching, you also commit to leaving a honest review and writing a testimonial for me as well. What I would do is I would actually take off $1,500 for you right now. But that's in just something like that. That way, like they have the perceived value and they're like, okay, so it's 3,000, but if I move forward today and I commit to leaving a review and giving a testimonial, then I'll get it for half off. That's what this guy's telling me. That doesn't seem like a bad thing. Like I can do that.
Yeah.
So so then they feel like they're getting the deal. And you don't say discount, you say incentive, right?
I like that better.
So that might be a good way to get started, to get that social proof. And then once you have that social proof, you don't need to do those incentives, or you could change it to where you could say, hey, the program's $5,000. But if you want to, move forward today and you want to do an installment plan, I'll take off $1,000. If you want to move forward today and you want to do it in full, we'll do 3, or 3,000. Instead, I'll take off 2,000 kind of thing. So the incentives are still there. They're still feeling like they're getting value in a deal, but you have just raised your incentive. You've raised your asking kind of thing. And that's how you really get that into a place to where it's serving both you and the client at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. And one last thing, I promise it's the last thing. As you were talking and you mentioned this is just for people who are starting out, I do think this could be also a really good thing for people who are switching up their program. So maybe it's like they're now serving a different clientele altogether and they've shifted in their business, or now they're going from, group to one-to-one or one-to-one to group or some combo or something like that, or they're serving all the same people in all the same modality, but they're actually just doing a completely different curriculum and they're not quite sure yet on the reception of that. This would be a really good tactic for that shift as well.
Thing.
So I'll throw that out there.
So I created that maintenance program. So this is, we talk about that. So, it's a program for people who go through my initial program, but want to continue, and it's in a group setting kind of thing. So I'm making the most of my time while serving multiple people at the same time.
More people.
But in order for me to get that first core, group established, I told them, I was like, hey, this is what I'm going to be asking people to invest into it moving forward. But for the first 5 people to join, I'm going to do a founding members investment level, which is this instead. So if you want to take advantage of that, then, let's do that. If not, and you want to come back later, no sweat. We'd be happy to have you, but it will go back up to that fuller amount once those first 5 spots are taken. And that worked out really well. And then I got those first 5 people in at that rate. And now I'm enrolling people into that program at the normal rate. So, I had that foundation kind of built through doing something like that.
Yeah. Love it. All right. I absolutely adore when we are on the same page and hadn't even talked about it ahead of time. That's always so fun. For those of you who are listening, just know that we really don't prep ahead of time. So when we have these moments where it's like, oh yeah, this would be a good idea. And I totally tried that and it worked. Know that that's actually just providential. You were supposed to hear that way. So take whatever you heard today, apply it. Let us know that you're applying it. Let us know how you need help tweaking it once you've tried it. And we'd be happy to help you make that more customizable for yourself, just so you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, thanks again for checking in this week. Special shout out to the Every Weekers. We see you. We appreciate you. We love you. And we're looking forward to seeing you guys next week as well for the next episode. It's going to be great. And if you haven't yet, check into that Facebook group. It's the Financial Coaches Community, Buy New Money Habits. And, ask questions there. We're always looking for new things to talk about on the show. So if you have a question you want to be talked about on the show, post it in there. That's a really good way for us to know what you guys are wanting to know about. So go ahead and do that. We'll see you guys next week. And until then, take care and take action. Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Financial Coaches Podcast, brought to you by New Money Habits and Sizemore Financial Coaching. Submit your questions to our hosts by emailing podcast@newmoneyhabits.com. Be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes and join our growing group of like-minded coaches on Facebook. And until next time, Happy coaching. Music provided by Summer School.